ISO stands for International Standards Organization, so it's practically useless in giving any clue as to what its role in the exposure triangle is. ISO is consistent though, across all digital cameras, phone cams and film types. The ISO setting controls how responsive the camera's sensor is to light. At the lowest setting, the sensor is least responsive. On many cameras, this is ISO 100. This setting is best when you're taking photos in bright light, like on a sunny day. At higher ISO settings, the sensor is more responsive to light. You set a high ISO when there's not much light, like when you're taking photos indoors or at night. The highest setting depends on how new your camera is. As you make adjustments to the ISO setting, you double the responsiveness each time you double the ISO number. So at ISO 200, the sensor is twice as responsive as it is at ISO 100. High ISO settings can lead to lower image quality. The higher the ISO, the more digital noise will start appearing in your photos, especially in the dark areas of your compositions. Colour and contrast will also be adversely affected at higher ISO settings. Contrast decreases and colour becomes less vibrant. Sensors in different brands and models of camera respond differently at higher ISO settings. This technology has developed rapidly in recent years, so newer cameras return better results at high ISO settings than in the past. It's good to do some experimenting with your camera to determine the highest ISO setting you're comfortable to use. For this experiment, set your camera up inside, close to a window, on a tripod or a stable surface such as a table, if you don't have a tripod. You do not want to have bright sun coming through the window. Find a subject to photograph, preferably something that's not black and white but has a more neutral tone. Turn on the lights in the room and set your ISO to 100, your aperture to f5.6, and your shutter speed so your exposure meter is reading 0, and take a photograph. Each time you make a change, take a note of what you are doing so you can remember later when you review your photos. Now close the curtain or blind to block light coming in the window. Adjust only the ISO setting so the exposure meter is reading 0. You'll be choosing a higher ISO number. Take another photo. Next, turn the lights out and adjust the ISO again so the exposure meter is reading 0 and take another photo. If your ISO is not very high, if there's still quite a lot of light in the room, set your shutter speed to a faster setting, that's a higher number, and adjust the ISO higher again so you are seeing a 0 reading on your exposure meter, and take another photo. Keep setting your shutter speed and ISO higher until you reach the highest ISO setting on your camera. Now, compare the quality of your photos at the lower and higher ISO settings. You are looking to see if you can find digital noise in the image. It appears as lots of lighter coloured little spots in the photos. It will be best to do this on a computer monitor and zoom into 100% on the photo. Look mostly at the darker parts of the photos, as this is where digital noise will start to show first. Key points for this lesson are: the ISO setting controls how responsive the camera's sensor is to light. High ISO settings can lead to lower image quality. Sensors in different brands and models of camera respond differently at higher ISO settings. Because of the lower quality results we start to see at higher ISO settings, I prefer to keep my ISO as low as possible. This technology has advanced rapidly in the past years and it will continue to advance. But this will probably mean at the lower end ISO settings, your image quality will also be even better than ever. So I maintain it's a good rule to keep your ISO as low as possible, as it will give you the best technical quality in your photos. I set it depending on the basic lighting conditions I'll be photographing in, and do not change it unless the light changes significantly. Typically, outdoors on a sunny day, I'll have my camera set to ISO 100. Outdoors, if it's cloudy or I'm photographing in the shade, it will be set at 400. Indoors, it will be ISO 800 or more, depending on how much light there is. At night, it will be up to ISO 6400, which is the highest my old Nikon D800 can go, and is generally good enough for my needs. Whenever you're finding your shutter speed is too slow to maintain sharp photos, you need to adjust your ISO to a higher number. This is making the sensor more responsive to the light and will allow you to use a faster shutter speed. The number of stops you adjust your ISO, you will be able to adjust the same number of shutter speed stops. Experiment by taking some photos outdoors with your ISO set on 100 if it's sunny and 400 if it's a cloudy day, and your shutter speed and aperture adjusted so your exposure meter is reading 0. Then go indoors and adjust only your ISO setting so your exposure meter is reading 0 again. Don't forget to be making notes of your observations and settings that you're using. Take some more photos. Next, go somewhere darker or wait until night time and adjust only your ISO setting so your exposure meter is reading 0 again. Take a look at all your photos and compare them. Key points for this lesson are: it's good to keep your ISO setting as low as possible. ISO can be considered the foundation of the exposure triangle. Use a higher ISO if your shutter speed is too slow.